Hello, thank you for your questions. So this is your reading on Kobe Bryant. I really appreciate your questions. They're quite detailed. So let me go right down into it. Oops. Okay, so even before already addressing the questions, I already have this card that has jumped out. So the energy that I'm getting is like, it shows that the reading is going to be strong. And that means something because, okay. Yeah, because there are many things that someone wanted to keep hidden. Yeah. And the energy, the person that wanted to keep it hidden, Vanessa. Vanessa. Yeah. Because this is her, this is her. She's been sitting on a lot of information. Yeah. So of course, sometimes, when you're doing card reading, the cards will show you things that you didn't even ask about, right? Perhaps because that was going to come up sometime down the line. So she is the one who has been sitting on information. And it's actually a good thing, that an excellent thing that you've asked these questions right now at this time, because I don't think it's the sort of information I could have gotten way back then when he passed on. Yeah, or even before that. There's a time period where people who have done wrong or who have done evil, they seem to think it's okay to rest, right? So like this card, when they've done evil and then they think it's okay to now rest, because everything is now fine, everything is okay, but it's not. And that is what it's showing. Like she thinks it's time to rest, but this evil, so there's two spoons, right? And the fire that she's built or that she's used to burn things down. Now the fire is still there. It's just that she thinks the fire is no longer visible. Whereas even if the fire is not visible because people are not looking down here, i.e., they're not paying attention to her, the evil still lingers, right? So the evil doesn't have fire anymore. In other words, it doesn't draw attention, but it's still visible enough to those who will look. To those who will look. And what I'm getting here, this is her here who thinks she can rest, and there's the fire that she did. Up here is those who are still willing to look, even when it's way past the time that he died, but they're still looking at the crash site. They're still looking at the helicopter. They're still looking at the conditions for why he died. Yeah, those are the people who would see this darkness. So there's no fire here compared to down here, because this is where she is. This is her state. So what I'm trying to say is, those who are drawn by like, if you want attention, or rather, like, if you want to see something when the attention is still on it, you only see as much as, number one, that person wants you to see, or you'll see the rumors, right? So if you're a tarot reader, you'll be able to tell, okay, distinguish from the rumors by looking. But now we're no longer at the level of rumors. We want to see, like, okay, now that the smoke has cleared up, what has been going on? And this is what I'm seeing, like evil. I mean, I've done readings. I don't know if I don't know what's wrong with my camera recently, but the evil, like the evil eye, almost like the evil is really something, right? On the card, it's really a lot. And that is her face. Now that the smoke has cleared, the building has cleared, and now this remains standing. But she doesn't think it does, because like I said, she's resting. She thinks it's now time to rest. And you may have noticed as well, she and her children, but she especially has stepped into the public light, right? Like, it's kind of dual energy. She's both in private, like privately mourning, in quote, but she's also still in the public. So she's eased herself more in the public light, like maybe attending certain events that she may not have attended before and stuff like that, So I'm not saying she's not attending events she didn't before. She definitely did before, but it's no longer the same. It's now that she is attending it on behalf of her own person, her own personal brand, as opposed to the brand of Kobe and Vanessa. If that makes sense. And that shows the extent to which, like, basically it's indicative of how, like, the separation that she wanted to happen. The separation. So this her being her, and then this kind of being him separating, right? But except that the separation was done in a really Machiavellian and malevolent way. So hence why there's this darkness here. Let me see what the cards will show, because I keep wanting to go to your questions, but I feel like there's so much information that needs to be revealed first, right? So let me do that. I'll touch on that, and then I'll go to the questions. Anything that has not been answered in the questions, then sorry, in the reading, then I'll make sure I do that. Yeah, it's a lot of energies. She wants to do more, like take a child. Take a child. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like the magician, she wants to take a child. In fact, she's already taken this child. I would not be surprised if something again like happened if one of the children got missing, or something of that sort. Uh the energies are not. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, so I'm going to pull out the cards so you can see I've already shuffled it, of course, and I'm going to pull out the cards and I'll do my best to explain what I'm seeing, because it's really actually malevolent, Machiavellian. And at times, again, despite what I see in the cards, obviously it still shocks me, or it still surprises me that okay, it's real, because obviously like what I would see in the cards, sometimes the energy is so strong that even if the papers haven't reported it, I can feel it. Like it's that heavy on my spirit. And this is one of those times. It's extremely, extremely heavy. She wants to take another child. In fact, in the room of the spirit, that child is gone. That child is gone. Okay. So this is her right here. This is her in the room of the spirit, wanting to do shady things. This card is representative of, let me say, both her and Kobe. Both her and Kobe, both her and her own personalities, right? Like Jekyll and Hyde, like Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster, one and the same, right? Like Jekyll and Hyde, like Jekyll and Hyde. She's very she's got her own coven. So what it means is there are many people who, so again, going into the next let me say going into the future, there's very much going to be an energy, a dual energy. I've said it before, a dual energy, because obviously the spiritual room has opened. So whatever that people were seeing, whatever you were seeing, is both the truth but also not enough of the truth. What I'm trying to say is that dual nature, right? It's not new. So, which is why anything I say here is not going to be shocking. And I'm saying this expressly so that you would understand, even like the gravity, like how far we have sunk, in that this is nothing surprising. Even though what is shocking is that it's real, if that makes sense. So, that's just a preface, because what I'm seeing is a lot of like horrendous things. Definitely The death, Kobe's death, because obviously I scanned I scanned through your questions. You asked about Kobe's death. Definitely Kobe's death was not an accident, right? Even though again the dual energy, it was an accident in the physical term of an accident, like the physical definition of an accident, it was, but spiritually it was not. And that is the information that I'm about to read now. Now, she is a grand, I guess, a grandmaster, for lack of a better word, or a grand witch of her coven. She started her coven and she restarted it with Kobe. With Kobe. Now, there are many things. So I always preface my readings because it seems and sounds so outrageous, certain things that I would read, certain things that I would say, but I have no choice but to say because that's what I pick up. I mean, I'm not going to go out of my way to make things up. There's no point. So I will say what I read. Now, if you probably like believe in past lives, she has had a past life and she has followed Kobe all the way down here. Um, I've done a reading on Kobe before, but it wasn't like this. And I do not think, at least to my knowledge, I don't think that I portrayed her as a victim. I really don't think I did. I mean, feel free to correct me because I feel like because I always, whenever I do readings, I always think to myself, did I pick this up before? Or why did I not pick this up before, right? What was I doing wrong in my reading? Or was it hidden to me? And why was it hidden to me? Or how was it hidden to me? It wasn't hidden, but at the time, there was so much smoke, and I was looking at the fire rather than the fire and what she would become after this fire, right? So the fire being attention, the attention from the burning of the plane, i.e., Kobe Bryant's passing. And now that the dust has settled and the smoke, and one thing about the spiritual realm, it works very well with smoke. You know how, like, certain people, the spiritual realm works well with elements like water, fire, smoke. Smoke is a really, really good element to work with when you want to read into the realm of the spiritual, which is why I always encourage people, even if you don't smoke, smoking is not bad for the spiritual realm. Yeah, I mean, I know it's contradictory, but that's what I've seen. It isn't bad. Like, you really get to see through. You really get to see through a lot of the smoke, the gaslighting that exists on the physical plane. Yeah, when you do smoke and you look in the spiritual room, so it's like a reverse. And if you don't smoke, maybe like incense, things that generate smoke, maybe not through you smoking, but things that would generate smoke, try to use that and do reading. Like, you're gonna see a lot, even a lot of the things that I'm talking about, because now that the dust has settled and the smoke is there, the smoke is highlighting a lot of things like her grand witch status, like the ritual that she's done, the ritual that she did to hide her real self, and the ritual now of what she's become. Because so she is both this. She's both this character, this person here, which is what we're seeing, and also this person here. But her real self is this person. Mainly because, not because that's what she started off with. This was her real self before, at least the prominent side of her. But just like I described with Elon Musk, right? So the reading of Elon Musk, Starlink, and the submarine Titanic, his personality, the spiritual side of his personality, is what has come on board, just like her own. The spiritual side of her personality is this man right here. Is this man right here? And this is what people have been looking at. And this is what people are still looking at. As long as people are not looking at the smoke and they keep looking at the fire, the attention, which translates into her beauty, which blinds and deceives a lot of people because she uses her beauty. She definitely uses her femininity, right? She uses the fire of the burning, of the helicopter, the plane, the burning of the events. Like, let me try and describe it. You know, when an event happens, or like when something really horrendous happens, people don't like looking at it. I know I sound contradictory, but just bear with me. People do like looking at it for the sake of attention. But if you really think about it and you pay attention, people don't like looking at it. Like, they skip around the truth. All they look at is the flames. They look at the flames, but they don't look at the shape of the flames. They may see or notice the general shape of the entire picture, the entire flames, but they're not gonna look, or they'll try not to look at the intricacies in the flame, right? So what it means is people were not looking at what she's done that could cause this situation to repeat itself. They certainly, yes, they looked at this situation potentially repeating itself because it seemed like a sacrifice. I mean, it definitely really screamed loud like a sacrifice, but they thought it was Kobe. They thought it was Kobe who had sacrificed himself and not her, Vanessa. I'm not saying that it is her and her alone. I mean, he contributed it to the extent that, like, this card shows, he was this pan, like he was this device, he was this the pan, like the plate, and you can see with this card, the plate is what holds this kind of the candle, right, that allows the fire and therefore the smoke, like smoke to gaslight people, the smoke to come up. So he is the genesis, he is the originator of the plans, enabling this grand master. Because from what I'm seeing, so I mentioned past life just earlier on, this is her past life. Again, what the spiritual room has come on board, and with the spiritual room opening up, literally it means, whereas before you would see a past life as just a past life and separate to some extent from this life, with the spiritual room opening up, and the spiritual room is opening up in different degrees for people. It's definitely opening up for everybody, right? But in different degrees, some more violent than others. Hers is a lot more violent. The violence, the violence of the spiritual room opening up depends on the violence of the amount of blood shed by the person who is involved. And she is heavily involved. So it means there's definitely a widening, violent widening of her spiritual realm. And what this consists of, like when I say this, when I talk about the spiritual realm opening up, I mean image, the genuine real image behind the persona that you see. You may have guessed you may have guessed what the image, the spiritual image was, but you'll be so far removed from the truth because you can only see like a little bit of the flame. But with the spiritual room opening up, it means the boundaries, the barriers get broken down, and then you get to see the full flame and just how bright the flame has been. And that is what I'm seeing for Vanessa Bryant. Like, this flame has been so big that, in fact, people have been unable to see that it is her and her alone. Yes, Kobe contributed to the genesis of it. Like, he laid himself down. He laid his life down for this candle to be set up. And the candle has taken on a lot more lives than one would think. Now, it may seem like I'm rambling. Just bear with me. This candle has created smoke. Smoke, smoke is very difficult to contain. Talk less of in the spiritual realm where a lot of people don't even know how to contain the smoke that is around them. This smoke then went on to open, like a gate, to open the next gate of casualties, which is the Travis Scott casualties. So I've made this connection before because it exists. Like, I mean, if I was making it up, I would not keep picking it up in the cards over and over and over again. So this connection from Kobe Bryant to Travis Scott, and now Elon Musk with the Titanic submarine, and then something else again to do with snow. Now I'm mentioning these details because she is going to pick it up. This And the more she picks it up, one of the things with evil people, or at least people who are hypocritical and won't admit that they're evil and who hide it, they won't admit until it's too late. Like, they won't admit the consequences, the train of their actions until it's. She has noticed it that, or rather, the thing with evil people, they think they can do it and get away with it, but they won't, because the spiritual opening up literally means everything is going to break down and be in the open, right? Like, there are not going to be any gates preventing someone else from seeing what is on the other side. Like, they'll see everything because the gates are crumbling, so everything is in the open as it should be in the spiritual realm. So she had no idea that the attention by people like myself, for example, was still going to linger on her. She had no idea. She really just thought that it was going to die off, die away. But so she had no idea that Travis Scott was going to take up this energy of victims and casualties, um, and then make himself the victim, because that's what she's done. That pattern, that energy ball of being the victim in the physical room whilst being the aggressor in the spiritual room. That dichotomy, like that divide, the spiritual room, what it's done, it's made the divide really, really narrow to the point where it's now crumbled, or it's crumbling, right? To the point where now what should be, or what should have been her past life that remained in the past, it's now become like the corner, the chief cornerstone of her life presently. So this is why you'll see, again, it seems like I'm rambling, but just bear with me. In the future, it might come to, you might see um a certain celebrity having two faces. Like, I literally mean two faces, but you would see the other face like as if you can see a ghost sitting behind a person. Yeah, or sitting next to the person. That is the real face. That means the barriers in that person's life are falling so quickly that you can now see the ghosts of the human past. But that ghost is going to become could become stronger depending on how much more blood this person would be willing to shed. And she is willing to shed a lot more blood. It's just, for her it's unfortunate, because she didn't think people like myself were still going to be paying attention and looking, but here we are. So I do see that, like, this image of hers, she wants to kill. Now this past self of hers was enabled by Kobe Bryant. Not just him, but the basketball complex. Because let's not forget, he's part of the basketball complex, like the paradigm. And that paradigm, because things are intermingled in the spiritual realm. So therefore, if Kobe Bryant falls, what does that say about basketball? It could either mean a good thing for them or a bad thing. And it so happens it's a bad thing. Why? Because the gaslighting that she has done, the smoke that she created, right, through these events, the catastrophic events, it should have caused people to both look away from like the details of the fire, but also still look at her enough to give her money and to give the basketball complex money. Because, of course, it's like little cliques, like school, little cliques. If something happens to a basketball player's wife, basketballers will rally around her, right? If something happens to a football player's wife, I mean, basketball players are less likely to rally around that football player's wife. Like, they'll stay unthinkingly, like they're not thinking it on purpose, but it's not their domain. So she wanted the basketball clique, I guess Coven, to stay standing and to stay still, right? Like, and for people to draw attention to it, and I guess like feed the beast, whether it's through finances or whatever, right? But it didn't work out that way, because now clique, the music clique, which is Travis Scott, he grabbed some of it. He grabbed some of it. So, I mean, I've talked about it in my readings before that these elites, and I'm not talking, definitely not talking about elites in the physical sense, like the definition people have of the elites, which is like people who are wealthy on the physical plane. No, the elites can be your neighbor. Just because your neighbor might look like they're not rich enough, they could be lying, they could be deceiving, just so that they can just infiltrate and you would never suspect them. It doesn't mean they're not like a grandmaster, right, in some coven somewhere. It could definitely mean that. It doesn't mean they don't know someone like Kobe or Vanessa Bryant. They could. They're just hiding under that facade of maybe not being wealthy like the elites. But no, that's part of what I mean by the elites. So the elites, they stick together when it comes to being against other people, right, who are not in their circle. But when it comes down to fighting for themselves, they turn on each other. And in a really sneaky way. Like, you won't see it happening, but it will happen in ways like this. So Travis Scott turning on her turning on the basketball complex and grabbing some of that, because the smoke that she created was supposed to be thick enough to cover her. So this image was supposed to be covered, but it's no longer covered. So you can see the person. You can literally see it. And then therefore, if you can see something, you can definitely point the finger at that thing. All right. So the smoke is not thick enough. And the only reason why the smoke isn't thick enough is because of Travis Scott. He grabbed some of it. So that fire, now, let me explain the way that's not weird or like funny, because I find it funny. I mean, the dynamics. For the smoke to be thick enough, she would have to shed a lot of blood, right? So inside fire, a fiery situation. Now, it's very possible because it's sort of like a jungle. There are no rules except the rule to be brave. Winner takes all, like the bravest person takes all, right? What it means is if she is brave enough to sacrifice this high profile man, right, and her child, and it doesn't back, because there's always the risk of it backfiring. So if it doesn't backfire, they can breathe a sigh of relief. Okay, it's worked. But even though it may have worked, it just means temporarily she can use it, except somebody else, let's say in the public eye, within that station, has enough balls, enough courage to jump in and take that fire. Now, it's a very, very dicey and dangerous. It's like when you sacrifice to a really angry God and you're not sure whether that God is going to accept your sacrifice or kill you instead. So you make sure that you're really meticulous, right? In saying the spell, saying the incantation. And that is what is happening, or that is what has happened. Travis Scott was really, really brave. I mean, I don't know if brave is the right word here because, it's more like positive, right? But within the circumstances, he was really audacious. He jumped into the fire, but he wasn't, his courage did not match her own to the level of or killing uh Kylie Jenner or one of his so he couldn't do that, but he did manage to take someone else's child or other people's children. So what it means is he had enough, let's say like 5 or 20% of the courage that Vanessa invested to create this fire and smoke and gaslighting, and he used it for himself. So he picked and he did win. It's like winning the lottery, or like let's say $20,000 worth of lottery, right? Where some people win millions. Vanessa won millions. He won 20,000 by poaching into her fire. And the fire that he used, of course, it diminishes her own, right? So it means whereas the fire is still supposed to be high up. In other words, the fire being high up is loosely translated, it means if the fire was still high up, people would not have the audacity to look into her in any form or shape as the one who did this sacrifice. So that's what the fire would mean. The fire would prevent people, certainly in the spiritual realm, the fire would scare people, it would terrify people to the point where if they even want to see her, or say something along the lines of her not really being the victim that people are making. Like it's as if something would jump on them and prevent them from saying it out loud. Yeah. And they'll just keep to themselves and never really voice it out. And therefore, which means the fire would keep burning. But the only reason why the fire doesn't look as vibrant and as deadly to critics, to her critics, is because Travis Scott poached on that fire. And now he has got some of that fire because he was able or willing to do this sacrificing of children and the likes, right? Um, and then after him is Elon Musk. Elon Musk, he is just so nonchalant in doing it that he doesn't even care because he knows in a way, or he thinks he will not be caught, right? Because he is hidden under the paradigm that people have created for him. So the paradigm that people created for Elon Musk, that paradigm of him being very eccentric, them not defining what they mean by him being eccentric means he can legally spiritually, in the spiritual sense, he can legally hide under the cover of eccentricity to do a lot of evil. And people are never going to identify the evil he has done simply because they already put him under the cover of being eccentric. So it's almost like one part of the spirit would of course expect him to do evil things, right? But the reason they will never really figure him out because and figure his evil out because they themselves have never come to the conclusion of this is him, because they've never come to the conclusion of defining what exactly do you mean by him being eccentric. Like when you say eccentric, does it mean him being rude to people on social media, as well as being a bloodthirsty, blood drinking pedophile? What do you mean by eccentric? Redefine it so that if okay, if a person defines things, it means whoever they are defining, if that person crosses the line of the definition, it's going to be obvious what they've done. Yeah. Like you wouldn't have to be a mind reader or a child reader to know that this person is involved. So there will not be need for any proof. Like it'll just be obvious. The proof will present itself. So that's what happens when things are in the open, by people defining what exactly they mean by words like eccentric. Now, I say all this to say they have not defined what they mean by Vanessa being both a victim, but also that phrase that they like to use a lot. There's something not quite right about her. There's something not quite right about this. When they say that, they're not defining what it is. So they're allowing her to run rampant. So what it means, what I'm trying to say is, now your questions have asked about Kobe, right? And his death. She's involved. But because people have not defined, they have not pinned her down to a certain definition of what they mean by there's something not quite right, that ambiguity is creating space for her to be ambiguous in her evil, for her to be ambiguous in many other paradigms, including the paradigm of a past life. So, what am I trying to say? She can then reach out into her past life and bring it to the future, which is the present tense and the future, and other people would not see it. So, what it therefore means is this past life can camouflage itself into another person. So you would see this person like in the form or shape of Snoop Dogg, right? And this person even looks like him. So I wasn't thinking of him before, but Snoop Dogg, that spirit of Snoop Dogg, um, replacing the real Snoop Dogg, and Snoop Dogg in this lifetime wanting to, or let me say the Snoop Dogg, right, of this character, doing everything to please her, to please Vanessa, even to the point of wanting to look after her as if she's his wife, like calling her, wanting to check up on her, and all because, bear with me, all because Snoop Dogg would not define what he means by her being shady. So this is exactly what I mean, like about spiritual powers and all of that. Like you have to be sure whether or not you believe in the spiritual realm, it's happening. Whether or not you choose to protect yourself, things will happen, whether for you or against you, it doesn't matter, but they'll happen. So what I'm trying to say is Snoop Dogg, his image is being used by her, Vanessa, because he would not be sure about where he stands when he says things like to himself or to others. Like he talks about her, but instead of being sincere with himself and grabbing onto that spiritual knowledge that his mind is, or his spirit, his intuition is pushing on him, he prefers to both acknowledge the intuition but also dismiss it. Like, what do you mean something is not quite right about Kobe's death, about Vanessa sort of like taking advantage, being in the spotlight, but you're still calling her up to check on how she's doing? And not only are you calling her up, you haven't even decided to yourself that, okay, I'm calling her up just to see if my suspicions are correct. No, you're calling her up to genuinely be worried about her and almost like gain some sympathy points from her, for her to be happy that you called her up, right? For her to almost like be grateful to you and be willing to be in your life, right? Almost like I'm a good person because I'm calling her up. So that she knows I'm a good person, and this attention that she's been getting, she's gonna give me a shout out. Like she's gonna give me a shout out. She might maybe write a post, or she might say things to people about my generosity, right? So it's like playing that double game. You want her to shout you out, you want her to praise you about how kind and generous you have been towards her and her children. But then you're willing, not even deep down, but in the open, you're willing to tell other people, right? Like that you're not sure about her. So it's like, what do you want? What do you mean exactly? That dichotomy, that dual energy is what people like Vanessa, or like evil people, certainly people who are more sure and certain about their evil or about their duplicitousness, they're gonna pounce on that. They're gonna take advantage of that, and they'll use the person's image. So, like I'm seeing with Snoop Dogg, she's using his image to clean herself, make herself look like, because see, with him reaching out to her, he's given her an opening to look even more like the victim. Because then, like in people's thoughts, and this is part of the spiritual realm, when people are thinking or about her, or when they want to think about her as more than a victim and as perhaps somebody who took part in Kobe's death, they will not go the full way. Their minds are not going to travel all the way down to the, I guess, the appropriate conclusion. Their minds are not going to try to gather information. Like it's gonna stop at a certain level. And the reason it would stop at that level is because of Snoop Dogg. The minute these people want to think about her as more than a victim and something else, the minute their minds want to explore this possibility, in comes the energy of Snoop Dogg. And the energy of Snoop Dogg speaks. Energy speaks. What his energy would say is, well, don't you think if she had something to do with it, I would tell you. I would tell the public. Don't you think so? Because, and then all these energies of, I was closest to Snoop Dogg. I was closest to Kobe, right? Even more than her. So I will look after her, right? And all these things. So once these thoughts enter people's minds with the energy of, put your sword down, put your thinking cap down, like put it down. You don't need to think about it. Don't, like, I am Snoop Dogg. I would know and I would tell you if it was the case. So there is nothing here. You're barking up the wrong tree. There's nothing, right? It calms those people's minds. It appeases them. But just because it appeases them and they no longer criticize, it doesn't mean it's it doesn't mean that silence or lack of attempt at investigating, it doesn't mean she is not going to take advantage of it, or her alter ego, or her past life. Her past life is definitely going to take advantage of it, especially since the spiritual realm is breaking down the barriers. Now she's fully on board with doing more than she did with Kobe. Yeah. So I'm definitely the child, a child being taken. And yeah, and like I was saying with regards to I will get to your questions again. I'll touch definitely on your questions, but I've just been led down, this route. So I'm gonna stop the reading this video soon, and I restart your questions in another video. But do bear with me. So what I'm seeing here, like, it's a lot of information that Snoop Dogg being used by her means, again, the Mandela effect, whereby people think they saw something and then it turns out they didn't. They are not wrong. They did see that thing. It was not a hallucination. But because there's always people working in the spiritual realm to confuse others, to gaslight them in order to get power. That's why then these people come to doubt the Mandela effect that they had. They doubt it, and then they sort of come back into, they fall back into in line. They fall back in line of the person, the manipulator's lifetime, so that what that person saw is forgotten, right? But then nothing is ever really forgotten. So what I'm trying to say is there's going to be two double versions of Snoop Dogg. The one that people don't think they saw and the one that Vanessa is using. The real person, the real Snoop Dogg has long ago learns to, even as I'm speaking, I mean, I know what I was saying about him contacting her, but I mean, again, that's the thing. If you don't pay attention, even if you contact a person once, that the strength of that contact can linger, is going to linger, especially if the person is very deliberate about using that contact. And also, especially if the person whose contact is being used does not make a double effort, right? So, like the strength that they use to contact, make a double effort of that strength, double down on refusing your image from being used. But he doesn't do that. It's almost as if he regrets the initial contacts, but he doesn't know or doesn't want to remove it. He doesn't want to go back and erase the traces of the contact. So what it means is she's at liberty to use it. She can use the contact for as long as she wants or until he wakes up, Snoop Dogg, and realizes that his image is being stolen and used, right? So in other words, what I'm trying to say, he has not copyrighted his image in the spiritual room, in the room of the spirit. So she's at liberty to use it because, in a way, he's given her permission to use it, right? Because he included her in the image, the non-copyrighted image. She is part of the image. She is the one who he claimed is a victim. So she is taking full advantage of that and covering her tracks, covering herself up. So, two versions of Snoop Dogg. The one that is very, very distant from her and from her family, because again, even though he was running away from admitting like his intentions fully, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Again, just because people ignore the spiritual realm, it doesn't mean the spiritual realm does not exist or is not going to happen to them. So just because he's been ignoring things, it does not mean she is going to ignore. And it does not mean she's not going to take advantage of it. So I do see her taking advantage of this and covering up a lot of her tracks. And not just that, but really even like a lot of things happening to Snoop Dogg's family as well, because again, evil never stops. Like evil does not have boundaries. If you play with fire, the that fire, the evil is going to smoke on that fire, burn blow the fire right back into your faces or into your face. So in saying this, Snoop Dogg's wife, if she is wise, she would put a stop to this in the realm of the spiritual. But I don't see her doing that because, and one of the main reasons, both her, Snoop Dogg, and then other people, they like looking good in front of people. So it's that facade, that deceptive spirit or lack of acknowledgement that they're only doing this because they want to look good to the public. That is what trips them up. That is what makes them stay in the corner instead of coming out from the corner and fighting for the image rights. Yeah, so that's what I see of her. Now I'm going to touch on the questions, and I do get a feeling all of this ties into the questions, right? Um, so because I spoke sort of kind of off kilter, if I lost my train of thoughts and I forgot to say something and you've picked it up in the video, do let me know and I'll write it down. I'll answer your question in the comment section. Yeah.